Here.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and. Okay. Tell us when we can go. Beginning. Okay. This one right here.
You're ready.
Okay. Welcome to the Parks Recreation Board meeting for April. Okay, so I'll call it to order. And first thing we want to do is introduce everybody. I'm John Lindman. I'm one of the co-chairs.
We'll just go around the table. I'm Vicki Handy, one of the co-chairs.
Elizabeth Sarah, Recreation Coordinator. Sarah Lincoln, Recreation Supervisor. Mary Baumgartner, Council Liaison. Karen Kellogg, and I'm still pretty new to this group, so thank you.
Todd Olson, Parks and Rec Board member. Great. And I'm Jim Cowbridge, Principal at Opposites Architecture in Portland.
And Ryan Matau, I'm the Director of Digital Engagement, the Project Manager from MIG. And I think we have at least a person up here.
Yeah, we got Chris. Can you hear us, Chris?
Yeah, I've got you. It's Brad member.
And Diana's there too? Is she behind whatever that?
Diana, you're on mute. Oh, yeah, so she'll be in and out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Driving.
Send me an email real quick.
We're counters being here.
Go full screen and then.
Logged in, yeah.
We'll wait. All right. All right. Does everybody have a copy of today's agenda? That needs to have a copy of today's agenda. Any comments or additions? If not, shall we approve that?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, good. All in favor? All right. All right. So
Aye.
approved. Summary notes from last meeting. Anybody have any to add to those? They look good to me when I read them whenever, a week ago. Okay, should we approve them?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Good. All those in favor? All right,
All right.
okay. No community comments tonight?
Nope.
Okay. So you guys, so our Community Recreation Center guys are up.
Okay. Tara, would you mind, there's a little zippy thing going on here on the screen, and then there is, if you can just close that out, I think it will, yep. Should be, and then it just wants to tell you about all the newest, latest and greatest features here. Just close those, and then if you can go to the full screen on the screen share, just to there we go. That's about as big as we can get, I guess, Jim. Thanks everyone for having us here. I know we've been here talking about this for a while. It's been a little bit though, and we want to go back through some of the work that we've been keeping the steering committee up to date on. We want to update you on some of where we're at in this phase of the work, and we wanted to get your feedback on those pieces particularly, and really the newest, latest and greatest information will be some summary of the open house event, which I know several of you were in attendance at. So we'll also be curious to get some additional thoughts about what you saw, heard, the conversations that you had along those lines. I'm going to turn over to the next, let's see, why don't I run through process really quick. Just an update on our overall graphic of timeline. I know this is a little bit small, but it's only changed just a tiny bit. We have pushed some of the operations cost pieces and the public polling pieces out a little bit further in the process from what the last version of this diagram is. We will send it out with the notes so that you have the updated version. We are still intending to be done in early June, and that's a really important date for everybody to be keeping in mind because we need to be coming back to you, updating council about this decision, which if they want to put it onto the ballot in November, which is our goal of starting this process, the last chance for them to do that is that meeting in July. I believe it is the 10th That is their last chance to take action to put something onto the ballot. And so we're trying to bring in all the best information that we can bring in early June so that they have a little bit of time to consider that. You have a little bit of time to consider that. And that we can then make sure that we get that decision in front of them in time to make that referral. That's kind of the direction that we want to go. So that's just a little bit of update on the schedule overall. I don't know, Jim, do you have anything to add?
No, I think
pieces here.
Yeah. That's
The dots on this at the lower end are the community engagement opportunities. As you already have, you are welcome to join all of those. Any of those, we love having you there because that both keeps you up to speed with this rapidly moving process, but also gives a chance to hear what the larger community is saying in those conversations. So I'm going to just keep encouraging you to keep showing up to things, and I really appreciate the time that you all are investing in this process because it is a lot. You know, on top of these meetings, which you're already committing to over the year, it's like meeting after meeting sometimes it feels like, and I know that many of you have been involved at multiple points here in terms of the steering committee. And
If I might make a suggestion, Tara, if you can cut and paste that image into the notes, into the summary notes, would be great. And if somebody on staff could send out, invites to all of the meetings, you know, it's easy when there's just a whole bunch of dates there.
Sure.
But if we have an invite come, you know, you don't have to say yes, but at least it's a reminder, hey, this meeting's coming up, it's important as Parks and Rec Board. That would be great. And if there's somebody on staff who could send out those invites. I hate to ask. Yeah, to us.
Okay, yeah.
I hate to ask you or Megan to do anything because you are
I can-
so overburdened.
You know, Vicki, actually, we've already got those on our collective calendars and we can add you. So it would be really an easy thing for us to just add on to our invites. So I can put that on my to-do list. One of the things we're trying to do, I think you've heard me saying this a couple of times in other meetings, Vicki, is we're trying to make sure that we're providing the support that's needed for the team, the staff team here, because you're right, it's like, this is a big project on top of an already big job. And so I want to make sure that we're getting as much support as we can. And that's an easy one for us to pick up. So I'll get that on my to-do list. And it'll just basically add, I just need to make sure I have all of the right email addresses and I will double check that, but yes.
Thank you, Brian.
You bet. So from there, we're gonna run through this. This is our agenda, not your agenda, but this is kind of what this presentation is about. And Jim and I are gonna tag team this a little bit, but really the majority of this content is about the design. I'm gonna step back in and talk a little bit about the open house and the next steps, but I really want to turn it over to Jim. We've got materials that are on the PowerPoint here. Pretty much everything that we need is on the PowerPoint, but we did, and thank you, Tara, for bringing these in. We did bring back some of the boards that were here for the open house. And I will say, pretty much everything is in the presentation for those who are online, but we may pull these out just to get closer looks at certain things if we need to. So if you see something that you want to get a little bit closer look at, we probably have at least a current as of last week version of it sitting on the floor here.
Sounds good. Okay. So to kind of start this overview, developing project goals is kind of the foundation for the work that we're doing. And these goals were developed with the steering committee. They really become a framework for decision-making, essentially. And starting with the first goal is really thinking about this being a multi-generational facility, welcoming year-round. It's going to be highly flexible, sustainable, and operationally efficient. It needs to consider maximizing revenue and cost recovery. Another key member of our team is Ken Ballard with Ballard and King. In fact, we were just having a conversation with him today about reviewing the program, the layout of the facility that we're going to share with you. He was quite positive and almost enthusiastic about a couple of elements that I'll share with you as well. But it's moving in a way that is really efficient to operate, and that's super important. And then we also need to be thinking about future expansion, especially the aquatics component. Whether that happens or not, we want to plan in a really thoughtful way So, if it does happen, it doesn't impact the operations of the existing facility. And we also, so we know how to construct it, build all the parking, and have it just seamlessly fit. And when we think about the aquatics, it's not only the pool or pools, you know, there's consideration of a lap pool and a recreation pool, but there's a lot of support spaces that allow that to actually work. And so we've given initial thought to those components as well and how it all fits on the site. And then how this integrates into the park setting is super important. You've got a really great park amenity, and also, you know, the outdoor concerts that happen, and that also forms kind of a bit of a challenge too. Like, how do you have a building plunk in there and still allow access to the park and the flow and the parking? So we've given a lot of consideration to that. So this is an amenity that doesn't detract from what you already have. It enhances it. That's really our objective here. And with that, thinking about indoor-outdoor program spaces, you know, also thinking about the amenities you already have in your community right now. So, for instance, the senior community center is a really great amenity, and yet there's programming happening there that probably takes away from some of the programming offerings that could be specifically for seniors because it's trying to do everything. So when this gets built, it actually is a win-win scenario and provides more capability, more programming in that facility as well as others. And then the other probably key part of all this as an outcome is that it's a vision that is actually compelling, it's thoughtful, it really works, and it's something that the community hopefully gets behind and supports it in a bond measure. Any questions or other thoughts on project goals? Okay.
Yeah, I'm always curious about this because we've talked a lot about how this is formed, how we got to here in the past, and just wanted to make sure that we're capturing everything that you all have talked about too, because kind of we've been aggregating as we go.
Okay. So now to talk a little bit about program, and these are some images of the types of community activities that could happen. And I must say, one of the almost priorities might be that this is, number one, a community facility, and it also has recreation offerings. That's super important, but sometimes there's confusion that, oh, this is just a rec center. And it isn't just that. It's really offering a lot of community activities and resources, and yes, recreation's part of it. And that's that balance of health and wellness and mind, body, and in spirit. So these are just you know, the types of activities that can start to happen that really serve the community. And then there are the recreation components, you know, and from fitness and basketball and, you know, gymnasium and aerobics. So a lot of variety that can happen. And I think the goal too is that all the spaces in the program are multi-use, multi-purpose, that they're not just one-dimensional. So they're spaces that can be really programmed all day long. So they're highly flexible. Another key aspect to this is really the spaces in between that aren't necessarily a program room, but what you can start to do in lounge areas and the lobby and indoor-outdoor spaces. So those are actually, in a way, sometimes the most memorable aspects of a project like this, and what the community really remembers, these kind of spaces where you kind of cross-fertilize with other individuals who are using the facility. So this is kind of a list, a kind of Excel, like, okay, here's these spaces and the square footages, which is, you know, a really important part of our exercise. A large part of this program, really most of it, was developed in the phase 1 effort that you all were involved with, and Ryan and other community members. So it really kind of breaks out into 4 components, major areas. There's the recreation spaces, which includes a 2-court gymnasium, an elevated walk jog track, a cardio weight area. That's about 5,000 square feet. That's really important in terms of that cost recovery goal. And, you know, you could even make that larger, but Ken Ballard, you know, this is kind of really the sweet spot and size for your community. With that could be a small fitness assessment health screening room, and then 2 multi-purpose exercise rooms, one larger, about 2,000 square feet, one smaller. They're really compatible and work well together. If you have a larger Zumba class, something of that nature, then you need more space. But there are also mind-body exercise rooms and Pilates that can work in smaller space. So this is felt to be very appropriate. And as we started to develop a layout that we're going to show you in a few minutes, we found this bonus room. We're calling it the flexible fitness space. And when we shared this with Ken Ballard today, he was really excited about it. And in this space, and you'll start to feel a little bit more, but it's a great environment for doing stretching. It can also be a functional fitness room. You're probably familiar with it. That's kind of a really a vital trend right now. And it can happen kind of in an open, flexible area. You've got some equipment and elements, but it's a highly flexible space. And he got really excited about this. He goes, wow, this is like one of these memorable amenities that are going to draw people to the facility. It's going to make money, and in the way it's kind of organized, it's a bonus space. It's not an expensive space. So this is kind of a really cool new element that just found its way into the program. And then community spaces, a community room that can seat up to probably, 250 people. It might be a little smaller than this, actually. To be honest, we aren't looking at a stage. This area includes a stage, so we're closer to probably 3,600 or 4,000 square feet, not 5,000. And the thought there is, oftentimes the stage, to make it work, has to be elevated. You got to have a ramp. It isn't fully utilized, and frankly, a lot of events you want to move the stage around anyway to different configurations. So this square footage went down, but the bonus space went up. And then, of course, we need the opportunity for a commercial teaching type kitchen. You may not completely outfit it to be commercial, but we want to plan for that to give you that flexibility. At a facility we did in Hillsborough, we planned for this size of kitchen. They had alternates of like, do we fully fit it out? Well, they ended up doing that, but it didn't have to be a fully commercial kitchen initially.
Question.
Yeah, please, no.
I would hope that all of the community rooms, even if they're multi-purpose rooms,
Right.
have all of the AV large screens,
Yeah.
coming from the ceiling screens that
Right.
do series projections,
Right.
not like this, unless they're the smaller rooms.
Yeah.
Will all of that be in the building expense?
Yeah.
Or is that an
No.
after it's built expense that the city
No.
will have to look at?
Yeah. I mean, when we estimate, we'll double check that, but that's almost a basic assumption now. And we'll indicate we'll make sure with the estimator that put a red dot in these rooms, like, no, this has to have pretty robust AV. The other thing, I'm glad you brought up, is like in a community room, we understand that there's a desire to have performance capability, and, to design a facility, community room so it has proper acoustics.
Mhm.
That means that maybe you have a little higher volume than typical, or, within a ceiling, we'll do shaping that's both absorptive and reflective. We did at a facility we recently completed, the Research Performing Arts Center in Beaverton. They have a space called the Lab, And it's a little small, quite a bit smaller in this, but it's like 2 of these rooms with the demising wall. But it's designed to really work for the acoustical variability of different types of events. And then there's also lighting that has kind of almost a theatrical capability, but it's not full theatrical lighting. So we're very familiar with how to build in flexibility. But part of that is the AV, obviously, too. So yeah, thank you for asking that. And then a multi-purpose classroom that, you know, has good storage, could be our room. It's a real workhorse type of space. You know, having lounge areas that are kind of distributed throughout the facility in a way. So certain times of the day, it feels like the senior lounge, and then around 3 o'clock, the teens feel like, hey, this is my space. So we found that the more flexibility you build in, the more vital it is. It's kind of hard to walk into a facility like this and see empty spaces, you know? And so the idea is, you know, everything has purpose and it's multidimensional. And then a flexible party room that could be subdivided. So it could be another classroom type space, or you could have 2 separate parties happening, or a meeting happening, one a birthday party and the other. So, and then, you know, that's really the essence of the program. But then there's all the support space to make this work in terms of the reception, the staff offices, and then support spaces like, you know, all the locker rooms and universal changing rooms. We tend to now build in more universal changing rooms and make the locker rooms, the binary locker rooms, smaller, especially in this phase 1, which we're calling it, that doesn't include aquatics. A lot of people really come to the facility dressed to play, right, and work out. So you don't want to overbuild that. So those are all considerations too.
One thing I wanted to add,
Yeah.
Jim, to how some of this fleshed out here is that we showed some images a little bit earlier about those kind of informal spaces around the building and outside. And some of these spaces, and especially in the exercise that we're going to go through about what the steering committee did, we really started talking a lot about the connecting outdoor spaces that maybe the party room would have, or the big community room would have, and that kind of thing. And I think that a lot of that is kind of, it's not free, but it's inexpensive additions that offer a lot more flexibility to the building. And I just wanted to recognize that came out of a combination of things from the design team, from, you know, the earlier conversations with you all involved, and especially with the steering committee. But I just think that you know, we've been finding, as you mentioned, the kind of bonus fitness space and things. We've also been finding, as we've been laying things out, there's lots of interesting opportunities to really expand what this building can do, and without adding a whole lot of square footage, which I think is really pretty exciting. And again, kind of confirm this again with both our architecture team and our operations team, that this is really a great basic unit of a community center. We're not talking about the gold-plated, you know, all you know, everything that could possibly be thrown in there. But we're also not talking about anything bare bones. This is reflecting a level of quality that I think would be really well received here.
And so, you know, we're estimating the total square footage for this initial phase around, you know, 57,000 square feet, maybe a little less or more. And that's where doing these more careful drawings of the building allows us to double check that number. But to Ryan's point, in our experience doing these, you know, when you get a facility around 55,000 square feet, that's sort of that's a facility that is community-based without aquatics, that offers kind of the right diversity, but to his point, it's not overstated. And then when you start to look at the aquatics, it's, you know, in the area of about 24,000 square feet additional space. So this is a way to go from just numbers to kind of a visual graphic, kind of a more helpful way to kind of visualize the actual proportion, relative proportion of the various rooms. And of course, this becomes a basis for us to start to study the program, how it might fit on the site. So you have to draw it up graphically. And then before even looking at any layouts on a site, we realized with the park environment, we want to create as compact of a footprint as we can to preserve as much land as possible. And we know that with the gymnasium and the desire to have a walk-jog track, that kind of fitting into the gym is kind of a very cost-effective way to do it. And, you know, it could be a great experience. But once you do that, you got elevator, you got 2 stairs, and it's like, I've been in a facility once where the only thing on the second floor was an elevator walk-jog track, and it was like, why go up that stair? It was not a very good experience. So we're looking at moving up perhaps some of the cardio weight or the large group exercise, maybe this flexible space. So we're kind of getting more of an interesting mix. And one of the things that came up in conversation too was perhaps some of the administrative spaces could be up on the second floor as well. It's not necessary to have all of the offices at the ground level, which is kind of ground zero prime real estate. So anyway, so then here's, just as you all know, the site context, which it's amazing you're part of the Tanner Creek riparian zone that moves across Parker Road, and it's a really visually really exciting element of the site, as well as the park itself and the views out to Mount Hood. It's pretty spectacular. And then this kind of zeroes in on the site. We're looking at lining up a vehicular access road that lines up with the road to the north that goes into the residential area. So that's super important. We're trying to limit the vehicular access to that singular point. We know at the southeast corner, there's kind of a dead end road, and, you know, no matter what, you know, we don't want that to be a primary access at all. Keep bollards there. In this initial phase, we're kind of hopeful that we don't change anything there. But when we start to get to the aquatics phase, there may be service access or emergency access, but we don't want to impact the neighbors. So this is just some views of the site, some of the, you know, amenities, views of the natural systems, the wetlands, the trails, views up to the adjoining neighborhood, and especially to the west, you have the significant density of housing that looks over this site. So we want to be cognizant of that, what their view is as well. Existing amenities, you know, from the concerts that happen to the shelters, there's a children's play area, skate park out towards Parker. It's a really rich setting and really ideal for this type of amenity to be part of it. And some of the new amenities from how we think about a parking lot being, you know, broken up in scale with bioswales and landscape, so it doesn't appear like a Safeway parking lot or something, right? And then enhancing trail connections, indoor-outdoor connections from lobbies and community room to the outdoors. The image in the lower right-hand corner is Hidden Creek Community Center, where the community room opens out to an outdoor courtyard where Bag and Baggage theater company did a performance there. So you know, these types of flexible space are really important, or being able to do yoga classes outdoors, you know, because you kind of plan for that flexibility. Or yes, yeah. In fact, one of the things we're talking about, we're trying to plan, is doing a tour out there with, I think it'd be really helpful because it's the same size facility. It's planned to have an aquatics edition. There's a beautiful park that MIG did. I mean, it's like, you know, it's different, but so similar. You got to experience it. The other thing that's interesting is it's built with CLT panels, very innovative with just the economy of a building with wood. And it takes a community center that oftentimes feels like it's in an industrial metal building to a whole different place where it feels like it's a place of retreat and calm, and it feels so much more inviting and welcoming to all people because of that. So here's the concept design that was generated by our steering committee initially. We set up two kind of game board tables, took the site and the model pieces, flat model pieces that I showed you, and they ended up coming up with two different schemes, but actually really quite similar. You know, like how do you approach parking? That was probably the biggest nut to crack. Not a fun one, but a reality. You know, we don't want to overstate the amount of parking, but we also want to provide enough. So finding that sweet spot. So couple different teams, and these were two of the concepts that they came up with. And you can see there was kind of a consensus after working on it that the parking should really push up to the west against the embankment. A lot of the views there from the aren't views, it's the back of the Safeway. And so, and then also the proximity and access from Parker. You want to get parking kind of pulled up and closer to that amenity. You know, both teams felt like, oh, the addition of aquatics should be towards the south, where you can expand the parking lot. So these are some of the common themes. As you can see, it was interesting, outdoor spaces being important, opening up to the park, access to the park, even thinking about food carts that could be brought into a entry plaza. They may not be there at times, and sometimes they're there for special events, or maybe one's there permanently, you know. So lots of similarities. And so with that, we took that information and developed some of our own kind of thinking around that. And probably one of the biggest distinctions between what was shared in that initial diagram and what we're showing here is really taking the community room and letting that, it's shown here in the red rectangle, and rotating that so it really faces out to the wetlands. We think that's such a remarkable amenity. And then let the recreation functions take more directly to the park. So there's that kind of distinction of orientation, which, you know, makes it more interesting, you know, different experience. And what happens then is you end up with this kind of almost residual triangulated space that we're calling the living room, instead of just a hallway between those functions. You actually end up with a pretty interesting space between. And then you can see the geometry of the parking lot is to the west, but because of the curved embankment towards the west, we start to create a larger landscape island between the two bays of parking. And what that does is create a larger landscape element. So from the housing above, or as you drive in, you don't visualize this big sea of parking, but kind of two zones of parking with this beautiful garden in between. And then around that center island, creating the ability to create a drop-off. So you can surf the island between the parking bays is broken in the middle and allows you to pull into a nice drop-off zone.
One of the things our landscape team pointed out with that wider median in the parking is that would also allow for some bigger trees, which again, you know, we're trying to be really conscious of the fact that there's a significant neighborhood above this that looks down onto the site, and so the trees will break up even the look of the building, even though the building is going to be an attractive view. We know it will be. It's going to be that much nicer to have kind of trees breaking that up a little bit too, and I think that's a pretty exciting opportunity.
Yeah, it really is. And I think one of our discussions together was how the landscape fronting Parker and that landscape island almost feel like they're an extension of the natural zone where the wetlands is. And I think there's a lot of really interesting possibilities for how that gets developed. And then this just shows how you could add the aquatics piece to the south. And as you can see, there's it doesn't come up on the screen, but there's this kind of larger gray block of program between the actual pools in the existing building. And the idea there is that's where you would put additional locker rooms, universal changing rooms, you have the aquatic staff, you got mechanical service access, and you got storage. So there's, along with the pool itself, there's a significant amount of space to make it work. And we wanted to make sure, even in this initial planning, that we were thinking about that. We want to make sure that can work, even though we're not going into great detail. And actually, just to go back for a moment, we're really excited when there isn't a pool there. There's a really nice stand of, or just an open field area. And we see that being like, wow, what a great opportunity for outdoor recreation, kind of a multi-purpose field. It could be another event space for bigger community activities, not only in the concerts happening, but art fairs. And we're doing a facility right now, it's just opening up in a few weeks in Redmond, Washington, where it's part of their civic campus with the city hall, and they have a big civic green. And they do this big event in the summer, it's called Derby Days, so you got 20,000 people. And outdoor concerts, I mean, it's a big deal. And so we designed the gym so it can actually open up and be part of that festival. You put down protective flooring, and anyway, I think, you know, those are all possibilities here as well to consider. So, and then here's kind of a little more of a detailed, a little easier to read floor plan. On the left is the ground floor, and as you come into the lobby area, the idea is that you can actually, when the building's open, just kind of walk through to connect to the park. You might just be going to the park. Well, you can walk through this building, or you can come at it from, you know, from the north end and just on a trail system to get to the park. And the idea is that that yellow area really is kind of this living room space, big enough that you can have small activities in there, and you don't, you know, it just feels inviting, especially when you have an event in the community room. You got 300 people or more. During the summer, you might have 500 people because you've got the outdoor terrace. And so it becomes this kind of informal kind of free function area. And then you can see the three chambers of the red block rectangle, the kitchen that serves that, storage. There's direct service access into this, where you've got your mechanical and other support space. And the idea is that wall, you probably have a garage door, a store. It's a really nice door. So when you're driving in and you notice that elevation, you aren't looking at, you know, recycling areas and things that could all be screened and handled in a real thoughtful way. Just to the bottom of that rotated community wing is another red box. That would be the multi-purpose classroom. There's another red box facing out towards the park. That's the party room that was part of the program. So and it could have an outdoor terrace associated with it as well. The rectangle of purple, kind of in the center of the plan, that's the reception area, welcome desk. It has really great sight lines to both entries, as well as sight lines down the corridor to the recreation area. So you can come in and swipe your pass and then get into that recreation zone or sign up for classes. There's a small group exercise room. That's the kind of square shape orange block. And then the two courts of the gym. Kind of exciting from the lobby. You could have glass into the gym. You could walk in and you could see all that activity going on. And then as you go down the hallway, you basically have some universal changing rooms and the binary locker rooms. So it's a very compact plan. So it's wayfinding. You don't need it because the building could just tell you what to do. There's a stair next to the gym that leads up second floor, elevator, takes you up to the second level, which is the drawing on the right-hand side. And as you come up the stair, an elevator would be in one of those gray boxes, little boxes across the hallway. You would have direct access onto the walk-jog track The large group exercise room is the larger orange rectangular space. And then as you go towards the north, that's where we have the majority of our administrative area. And they were really, you all were excited about that. Adds another level of monitoring up here. And honestly, a lot of the program staff are going to be working in these group exercise spaces. So kind of a win-win scenario. Downstairs, not only the welcome desk, but there would be an office there too. So there's another level of supervision. That works well. And then this L-shaped space next to the walk-jog track, that's the larger one, is the cardio aid area. So it has overlooks into the lobby. As you drive up to the building, you're seeing activity happening. And then the triangulated area is that kind of bonus fitness area, the functional training. And the idea here is that the roof of the community room area would be a flat roof. And maybe it's an opportunity to even have a green roof, or even, and this doesn't show it in this drawing, as we continue to work on it, we're thinking there could be outdoor terraces and decks that are, you could walk outside and be part of the green roof overlooking really the views out to Mount Hood as well as into the wetlands. So we think this is a really exciting plan, and we got that type of an endorsement from Kim Ballard today as well.
And so the
yeah.
next thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of the open house input, but before we get there, because Jim just went through a whole bunch of ideas.
Yeah, we want to hear.
And I want
Yeah.
to just prompt a couple of thoughts, like,
Yeah.
of all of these ideas, these possibilities, this building is not designed yet. This building is not approved yet, is not funded yet. So we've got opportunities to shift things. And a lot of what will happen in this building is about programming. And so, I want to just kind of keep those things in mind, but I'm curious from all of you, like, what stands out? What stands out in this concept right now, or this program that you're particularly excited about, or maybe wondering about, have questions about? And so I just wanted to kind of take a pass around the room to see what kind of, now that we've kind of built up to this stage, what we're hearing and feeling about the potential possibilities here.
Well, I'm new, so please
Yeah.
excuse me. One of the things that it looks like it's just going to be so diverse. Like you could have birthday parties there, you could have a meeting there, and then you could go work out. But obviously, people would have to join. So again, this is too weeds, but if, let's say, I just want to go to a meeting there,
Right.
must I be a member of the community center?
No.
So how do we delineate who is, who isn't, and how that?
The way this is set up right now, the red boxes can all be accessed from the public lobby area. And usually in those red boxes, there's scheduled events. And so you can just show up to a class. The class might be free. It could be that you pay a small fee to participate in a class. So this whole triangulated zone and the red boxes are all kind of what we sometimes refer to as a free zone. It's a community living space. And you might just want to pass through to go to the park. Totally cool. Or you might want to just meet a friend at the lounge, and there's a food cart out in the plaza, and, grab a little bite to eat and sit there. So no fee necessarily to use that. And that's why the purple desk area is kind of designed where you walk around it to get into the recreation area. And that's where you swipe your pass or you sign up. So yeah, it's a really good question. And yeah.
I think it's something we're going to have to keep refining how we explain as well. I think it was something we got some questions about. People who were a little more savvy to recreation centers were like, well, so what's the fee schedule going to be when you walk in and whatever.
Right.
And other people were like, so is this all going to be free or whatever? Like, we've gotten that question in different forms throughout this process. And I think it's one of the things we're trying to clarify. Right now, what we have to go on is the way that most communities do this is X. And that's kind of what we're building up our model based on, is like what the best practices are. there are gonna be some choices that city council is gonna have to make, that the community is gonna have to make, and ultimately even the programming, like, a lot of those red spaces are designed to be rentable, to make some revenue, but in times that they are not rented or times that we want to run certain programs, they may be a free activity. They may be a free hangout space. We talked a lot about that as possibilities. That front classroom, I think, has a huge potential for that. It's like one of the first things you'll see when you come in. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that might end up getting used. But the access question that you're getting at is a really key one. Thanks, Jim, for explaining that.
I know that this is not the time, but I just can't help myself. I like the idea of any of the families in, West Linn School District who are, identified as free and reduced. As part of that, they get the free pass, family pass,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah, and that's not untypical, or
Yeah.
scholarships, I mean,
But
Yeah.
it's just
it's just,
automatic.
Yeah.
Okay, with the school district, you're
Right.
identified getting free and reduced.
yep,
As part of that, you get a free pass to our
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
rec center to promote that inclusion. Because that population is oftentimes excluded because there isn't
Right.
to take them.
yeah.
There isn't the transportation.
It's a really great point, and it is something that,
I know I'm
Merit-
way ahead.
well, not really.
I'm already thinking how it's getting staffed.
Well, and actually, that type of feedback is something that we want to share with Ken Ballard. I mean, we're just talking with him today, so it could be a scenario like, well, maybe because we're doing so well with this functional training space, like that helps offset and provide these types of opportunities you're talking about. He can run some little scenarios, so not detailed, but rough order of magnitude. What would it mean to provide what you're suggesting? So this is not in the weeds now. This is actually really important feedback.
Sorry.
No.
Any other things that stand out? I mean, I think that those kind of ideas being sparked by this is part of what this process is about.
And it's actually a really important consideration because as, you know, this goes out to the public, the messaging of this is really important that sometimes people feel, oh, there's a rec center, we have these private clubs, why do we need this? No, this is about community and perhaps if it makes sense to do what you're saying is part of the messaging, and I would think you'd want to convey to your community.
I mean, we don't have, compared to the other school districts, we have a ridiculously low free and reduced lunch need in our community. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a lot of work with,
Still.
school districts, and
Right.
it is very true, the correlation between the free and reduced populations just not feeling welcome
Totally.
in, how do I get part of that? I don't have a mom to take me there.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
anything we can do to break down the barriers to make sure that that's welcoming, I think, I don't know, you're more involved in the
Well,
field than I am,
and
but,
I mean, I coach at the high school, and it costs money to play. I mean, when I grew up, nobody paid money to be part of sports or part
Yeah.
of theater or part of anything at a high school. It was all part of what people paid their taxes for to do. That's why every high school had a swimming pool too, but I mean, none of that exists.
Ah, the day.
But in a place like West Linn, that's a high socioeconomic community.
Yeah.
If you're not one of those people, and there are a number of them,
Yeah.
you know, when it costs $300 to play a sport, you don't want to raise your hand and say,
Yeah.
well, can I do that for $50 or can I?
yeah.
Yeah.
So we let our kids know. I mean, I coach cross country and track. And the first time we get them together, even before we get them together, we let them know that that's not a problem. If you need to have some fee reduced, we can make that happen. Okay? And you need to talk about it ahead of time and let it know that it's there.
Right.
Because in a community like ours, everybody just assumes, you know, that
Right.
mom and dad could write $1,000 check. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
When in fact, that's not the case for a number of people in our community. And you're exactly right. We want to welcome those people.
Yep.
We need to have those people in our,
Yeah.
I think that's important messaging for sure, to add in. I was taking notes and Karen asked a question before, which was this, I love the living community space, but then you have the rec. And how do you say, well, wait, you can't go there because you're not the member or you haven't paid yet? And that, until you put that design drawing up and kind of said, oh, here's the purple spot,
Yeah.
right? And that interface where you don't want to make it too exclusive, right? It
Yeah.
has to be seamless across
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And it has to be welcoming to everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's this kind of understanding of, here, I'm here for this purpose, and that's okay, I'm paying extra for that, to use
Yeah,
to go use the weight room or whatever,
Yeah.
that's fine.
yeah.
You know, but it's that kind of, how do you gateway some of that without feeling too pretentious? I don't know if that's the right word or not. And then I think the second point is the community aspect of it. I think we have to do a little better job of explaining and promoting the community use of it. Because when Vicky and I were there, my wife were up there, she was looking at it, and then when I walked out, I was like, so what do you think? She goes, I'm never going to use it. And I'm like, really? I think I could use it quite a bit, but I want to go use the weight room and play volleyball or do whatever. She's not into that. She has her own athletic thing, how she wants to do it. So she missed the community aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so I just provide that some feedback as we move forward to figure out how to, because not everybody needs the rec center piece of it.
Yep.
It's the community. So like this is flexible space. We can do this. We can open the doors and have outside, you know, to try and think, to help them understand why they might want to go there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think and the understanding that recreation just means you don't jog around a track,
Yeah.
play basketball.
Right.
That if you're sitting in a group and you're knitting, or you're doing
Yeah.
quilting,
Right.
that's part of recreation.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I think people miss that, you know?
It's kind of a fake distinction in the grand scheme of things. We've been talking a lot and we've been emphasizing a lot, community and recreation spaces, but really a lot of that is about messaging that same thing. It's like, this is a recreation center, it includes all of these other things, and we want people who might come to it thinking community center, we want them to feel like part of it as well, but this is still an active conversation. Like, we're still not, like, that message alone doesn't get it across. And it doesn't get across the point that you're making, I think, which is that recreation is actually a much broader concept than basketball or, you know, anything that can happen in a gym or a fitness area or even a fitness studio. It's like, for some people, recreation is a book club. For some people, recreation is an art class. For some people, recreation is just a place to meet up after school. You know, all of those things are recreation, and people, that front door space, that little purple box, the person who sits behind that desk is going to be one of the most important people in your community, because they're going to be the ones that are seeing, watching, and interacting with everybody as they come through that door. And they're going to naturally be like the welcome face.
It's a welcome.
Yeah, it's like, and that prominent, like, it's like a point, like on a, you know, like a peninsula out there is going to be a really cool spot to be in that mode.
Yeah, and to your point too, I was just thinking about it as a good example, like someone comes up to it and feels like they want to recreate, but they, you know, does it feel intimidating? And that ambassador, that welcoming person is really important, because there's that eye contact, and they might pick up the vibe that this kid would love to recreate but doesn't have a pass, whatever. It's like, come on in, you know what I mean? And the other thing is, sometimes these facilities actually have gates. And that, there's ways to even electronically do that, so you don't have gates. And it's really this island, this peninsula of welcoming. So I think this is set up to feel very friendly.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, there are decisions that whoever that person is at the desk can make to make people feel welcome too.
I think Todd's comments are really important though. And I think part of that, I love something that you've done, Jim, that I think is just so wonderful, is that whole yellow and red zone. Because that to me is that community zone, and it's so easy to think about that big community room as the fancy room that you have to rent, right? But if I see little doors there, if we make it much bigger, and if it's not in use, you know, have it be totally open, have people be able to go in and sit down and meet with a friend, show pictures of maybe an art show, or a quilting day, or,
Mhm.
you know, I think really getting more creative, and this is, I'm just brainstorming based on what you said, on how we can position the big red room. So it's not the fancy room that's blocked unless you have it rented.
Right.
And I think, you know, bigger windows, bigger doors,
Yeah,
open,
all that.
and that its default is, this is. a place
Open and
where
less
we
used.
have-
Right.
I
Well-
talk about our kids who are playing basketball in there, because I don't wanna watch it, do you? Now, you know, it's just, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, absolutely, we need to be more creative and show more of that, because that's the free. I mean, I don't have to ever pick up a basketball
Right.
to spend a lot of time in this place.
So just a thought on that is there is a perception like it's one big red room. That's 3 rooms. You actually have 5 activities that could be going on, or you have a cooking class happening near the kitchen, and then the other 2 chambers are opened up for a, you know, quilting class or something. The other point is there's different ways to color code this.
Yeah.
At times, the whole ground level could be red.
Yeah.
It really can, like, you've got the after graduation party for high school kids, and that gym is like the congregating area, and they take over the small group exercise room, which is a flat floor, flexible room. So the whole ground level could be red. And honestly, there might be ways that we layer this plan to show different color coding, like, make it clear what is, and in fact, maybe it is pretty clear, but if you just we had a plan that said, boom, that orange area could become red, all of a sudden you realize, wow, this is all community. Just a thought.
Well, I'm just looking at the sign, and this is, I'm learning so much today. I almost think, any people that I talk to think it's gonna be a big fancy gym. And even when I read the title, Community Recreation Center, I almost think it should be Community and Recreation Center.
Yeah.
Focus more on the community.
I like that.
And not just the recreation thing.
The other thing is just drop recreation completely, and it's a community center. I mean, it's called a Hidden Creek Community Center. So, and there's lots of recreation, but most community centers have recreation. We don't have to highlight that. I would,
I just think,
consideration.
I think for a lot of people, it's like they already belong to a gym and they already do their thing and they're just like,
Yeah,
why?
That's a really good idea.
Why?
Center's an adult community center. Right.
Yeah, and I think that there is a balance there. There's definitely a strong, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the feedback that we heard too. There is also a strong thread of just like people who are like, who look at that gym and they're just like, finally. They're like, finally, we'll have some more gym space. So we'll have some more flexibility to do some things, and that's the thing that sells them. And so I do think that there's a balance to be struck there. I think that probably they're going to see that and immediately identify it in a way that maybe the people who are thinking about meeting their friends or whatever else aren't going to see that, because they don't have gym lines. They don't have, they don't have basketball lines to key them into what they're going to be doing in that other space. But I do think that there's overall there's a balance to be struck there.
I want to make sure that Chris gets the chance, because listen at the workshop, and and Diana's back. So Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I attended my neighborhood association meeting 2 days ago, and this came up. The first question was, hey, is there going to be a pool? And the good, or at least a few people who not only knew that the pool was not going to be part of it, but why, and that, kind of the track record of aquatic center initiatives in West Linn. So that was the good part, but there was considerable discussion on that. I think having that space on the diagrams that are available for the public will keep those who are passionate about someday having an aquatic center, keep them motivated, and it'll keep the idea alive. And so we can better gauge in the future, is there going to be enough interest to actually pay for and maintain an aquatic center too? So So that was the first thing. The second thing is I really like the thought that is good orientation of the buildings and the rec center, the wetlands, I'm sorry, the community center, the wetlands, the rec center, the park. I appreciate the thought that's going to, I think that is going to be, I think that's going to resonate, at least with the people I've talked to about it. So thank you.
Cool.
Diana, do you have any, thoughts that you'd like to share?
Feel free to pop, feel free to pop in if you get to a place where you can unmute and talk. I think that's it's great to hear that. And if that comes in the middle of something else that's being presented, that's totally fine as well. We're not trying to cut anybody off here. Are there any other like impressions or questions that come up immediately in talking about this design? I want to talk a little bit about what we saw, what we did, and what we heard at the open house as well.
Yeah, let's move on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Actually, that is just something that, from my frame of reference, when you mentioned minimizing locker rooms, I just thought it's interesting, and maybe gym going has changed since I was really going to gyms for years. I never came dressed to work out, especially when I was like coming at lunch for my job. So I'm just saying, that maybe things have changed, and I defer to your wisdom on the topic. I was curious about that.
It's a great point. It's a balance. I would say it has changed a bit, but we're not going to undersize it. It's right-sizing it, frankly. In fact, Kim Ballard, it was a comment we discussed, like I went in and double-checked this, but we are providing more universal changing rooms.
Yeah.
Many more, and if they're with the aquatics, you're definitely going to want much more locker rooms. So anyway, I didn't mean to undersell that, but it is,
it is important, but important to right side.
Yeah.
The dress code these days is a little bit closer to athletic wear anyway, in most cases, right? Yeah. I laugh about that all the time. I was like, a few years back, I was doing plan for Lake Oswego, and I was like, I swear the dress code in Lake Oswego is that you have to look like you're either coming from or going to a yoga class at any time.
That's pretty good. I like that.
Or you have to be ready to at any moment. There could be a yoga class. Yeah, that too. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about what happened at
Is
that.
there one other,
Yeah.
good? Okay.
Excellent,
Right.
excellent.
Okay.
If we could, so the open house, for those who weren't there, the way that we set the room up, and this was at the Grand Fur Room in the Adult Community Center, we had a ring of stations with visual boards, many of which are on the floor over here, that people could explore kind of in their own pace. At every station, we had staff people or, thank you again to the PRAB members, the steering committee members, the city councilors who were there, who got engaged with people and got conversations. We put a lot of notes up on those boards of people like thoughts they had about it and everything else. We've got all that transcribed now. But this is just a few images of the overall crew there, just interacting. We paused after we had gotten a big swell of people to just kind of make sure that everybody knew all the places that they could go and interact. But mostly it was just small little conversations happening between people who had come, between those people and the staff people, just kind of working over some of these ideas. And they really got to see a visual presentation of all the materials that you've seen tonight, as well as had a station where we had the site plan at scale with the pieces that you could move around that the steering committee did that's over here that we talked about earlier. We saw a few people interacting with those. I was actually kind of surprised that more people weren't like zeroed in on that. It was right in the middle of the room, but really what seemed clear to me was that people wanted to have the conversations and just kind of like look at the materials. That a lot of people milled around for quite a while, and we'd kind of like pull little comments out of them, and several people ready with their Post-it notes, throwing notes up there, whether they're legible or not, with the conversation that we had at the end of the meeting. But
I want to talk to you about
but I wanted to, and if we bump onto the next one here, this gives you a sense of.
I just real quick though.
Oh, sure.
It was really well attended. I think
Yep.
you said that, but we think maybe up to 70+ people, which was
Yeah, we got about 39 people signed in. We went back, we actually shot video of the whole thing as we were running through it, and we went back and kind of looked at the peak of people. And I think based on that we were really closer to like 70, 75 people. Megan was saying that, coming into this job, she was told over and over again that, West Linn just doesn't show up for these kind of things. I really feel like people showed up for this. And we got a lot of really great feedback about that. Just interestingly, as I was going through that sign-in sheet, people who did sign up, only a handful of them were already on our contact list. So we're continuing to build more people, more attendance there. Overall, we heard a lot of support. We heard a lot of enthusiasm for the general ideas, the concepts that were coming up. I think people really liked. I was standing near the kind of site analysis and site. They really liked the way that it was interfacing with the existing park. I think, Jim, you heard quite a bit of, like, wow, this is going to be like, I can totally see this piece being really good or this other piece being really good. The overall concept, we did hear about pool. We're going to hear about the pool. I think that we've been prepared throughout this process to hear about the pool and to understand that the message that we're carrying on this and that we'd like to share with you is really that the way to get to a pool is through this building. It's like not just the physical, you're going to walk by that peninsula and that cheery greeter, but the way to get this community to support this overall is to get this building on the ground, because without this building, the pool doesn't support itself nearly enough. And so it really is the first step in that.
And I'll just add that I was talking to a pool advocate, and he saw the diagram of how the pool would work. I explained how, we're really thinking about all the requirements and the parking. He goes, I can get behind it, that I appreciate the fact that you all are giving it real consideration. It's not just a dotted rectangle, but he thought, yeah, okay. And he understood that, just what you said, that this may be the first step to actually getting a pool.
And so there were a lot of pieces of the program that people were talking about, the kind of multi-generational aspect of it. There were we didn't see a lot of younger people with families necessarily at this event. There were a few that I definitely talked to about their kids and what they're interested in. There were a couple of older folks who came up to me and were like, well, I just want to make sure that we're also hearing from the younger families in this community. I'm like, oh, we're hearing from them. It's like, it's coming in different ways. They aren't necessarily able to show up like right now and tonight, but really when we did our first round of community input on that front, we heard a lot from the kind of younger families and that kind of thing. But that multi-generational aspect, the kind of there's something for us at whatever stage we're at, was definitely, we were getting some real connection on that. And I think we're starting to tell that story in a way that people are connecting with.
I am going to go to our Scouts meeting and some other meetings to get them to our next open house.
Great.
So that we get some voices and, you can tap into your team.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting problem in the evenings, okay? 6 o'clock is usually dinner time for young families.
Sure.
Okay? Kids have homework. They might have done something after school. So, I mean, yeah, like my group, get done with their sports at 5:30, and then there are people that, I mean, at the high school, I mean, it's like, then there's lacrosse, and I mean, lights are on till a long time. There's softball. You see that if you go by any of the schools.
And we've heard that the people who are doing gym sports are getting those last time slots so they can get into, so we know that they're staying late.
But yeah, there's no doubt about the fact what we've heard is that, if you'd like to play basketball, all the school sports all the basketball courts are full.
Yeah.
So there's no place to go. So this is going to give us the opportunity for the community to have more basketball courts, which is not a bad thing.
I mean, really, there are other opportunities. I mean, you could go to a elementary school or a high school, and we're going to do a lunchtime presentation. And we want to get your feedback. That's what we found is, instead of expecting people to come to community events, you go out to them.
Actually just had that conversation with the chair of the Rosemont Ridge PTO this afternoon. So we're gonna reach out both to the leadership class team group that the students run, and also there were some channels that were more parent and kind of teacher and student focused that they were indicating to me too. So I'm feeling really good about that. Some more connections outward from there, and we're continuing that path of like those smaller meetings where we can come in, to where they're already at, or make it really convenient for them to provide some feedback and make sure we can flesh out those ideas and issues. And as Vicki said, and I'm going to keep reinforcing, get people to that next open house, because it's going to be a really important piece of support building and an understanding of what this thing is before we get it out in the public's mind as a ballot.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of this, and these students, they're subject area experts. And you want to value their time. So is there some little small gift certificate or to McDonald's, or maybe some healthier, but some sort of incentive to say, hey, we value your opinion.
I also heard that showing up with pizza doesn't hurt.
Well, yeah, we've done that too, actually. I think that's a simple thing, but just a way to say that we value you. Yeah.
Well, I do want to, you asked for feedback.
Yep.
I loved it. I thought the feedback I heard from everybody there was extremely positive in the way that we did it. My observations, Jim, you're so patient in explaining things, and I think you were exactly where you needed to be, explaining how it can all work. But it was very patient, and Ryan, a different style, but generating some excitement there. They kind of went to one or the other first, and somebody who is very strongly opposed, doesn't want it, doesn't matter. He said, well, at least you're listening to me. And
I talked to the same guy.
he spent time with John, he spent time with me, spent time with others. And he said, at least you guys are listening to me. You gave me a format to talk.
Yeah, that's
great.
And I think, a lot of times people just need to be heard. And then the passion just kind of goes down, their resistance. So I loved the format. I thought it really worked. Great feedback from everyone. And what I was observing, we really used your guys' strengths in a very positive way. And so just, big kudos. I did break up a little tiff between two women in the corner. One had
Did they take that outside or something?
Oh my gosh. One had just put indoor pickleball up. And no, it gets better. And then the other woman said, oh, pickleball, it's all about pickleball. This is just another way to get more Linn.
God forbid there's more pickleball.
And she didn't realize that the woman was standing there who had put it up, and she said, you're just a pickleball hater.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I just said, what's so important here is that both of your points of view are heard.
Yeah.
Put some Post-its that you can
Yeah,
write how you
right.
feel, put it up there so that we can really embrace all
Yeah.
of that input.
Perfect. That is good. I didn't know about that.
So just a couple other points here, that indoor-outdoor connection piece definitely connected with people. Like, people were seeing that immediately. They were like, yes, I can see, like, wanting to have a spot near the building. I heard some interesting points about parking. People were definitely curious about parking and transportation, like, in and out of the site. But a couple of people, as they were thinking about it and looking at the way that parking had been laid out and the concepts and stuff, they were like, the parking up there is really going to help the neighbors down below the park. Because right now there is no parking for Canada Creek Park. And you've got now a formal parking lot that you can move right through the building easily and get into the park. And that increases, I was commenting then, that increases not only parking for that park, but also increases the accessibility of parking from that park and getting people into that park. So, even just the fact that it's kind of starting from up the hill rather than starting from down below. So I think that there's some interesting positives on that front. There was definitely some voices about, like, well, how much traffic is this going to generate? What are we going to do at that intersection? That crossing is going to be important there, and we're taking that to heart. We're definitely digging into that as we go forward here. We probably won't have what the final answer is about what that intersection is going to look like or whatever when we get to this concept, but we're gonna keep moving that forward. We're gonna keep that conversation in the mix.
I think what we're doing, we will create, plan for a de-acceleration lane and pull off to turn in. So there will be some improvements to Parker Road we want to include in the estimate. And then maybe we'll carry a number or a possible signal, not that we're promising that or even talking to it, but just, I think, knowing that that would be an additional cost and
It
just
could be
knowing.
a substantial one.
Yeah, right, you know, it is, and so we want to be able to just, plan for that as kind of an add-on if needed, so.
Yeah. And then just, excitement around the kind of potential for green features, sustainable features in this building, everything from EV charging in the parking lot to, you know, greener roof, you know, connections to just kind of the way the building is built and the standards that it's built to. So I think that's really exciting. So I think we do want to, we want to start kind of, I want to kind of wrap that up, but I want to ask before we move on from the feedback, some of the others that were there. I'm curious if there were other things that you heard that you would, I mean, we already heard a little bit about pickleball, a little bit about, you know, the kind of conversations that were happening around the edge, but any of you that have any other observations from what happened here? Obviously, we haven't yet gotten you the full version of all of the notes and everything, but that's done. We just are vetting it right now to make sure we've gotten everything, but there's an opportunity to add a little bit to that from your experiences, and I wanted to make sure we captured that. So is there anybody who was there that wanted to add up any or add on anything to what we've said about the interactions?
No, I mean, Vicki and I talked to the same guy who was a retired guy. He said, he looks at me, he said, "You must be a retired guy." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you know, what I did with my kids is I paid for them to have gym space or to be, you know, I paid for them to be in clubs that could do that." And I says, "Well, what about your grandchildren?" "Well, I pay for my grandchildren to do all of that." I says, "That's fine, okay? I mean, I paid for my kids to do that kind of stuff, and they're grown up now, and now I have grandkids and one that lives here, and that sort of thing. And I might use this facility with them, I might not. But when I look at the facility as a person, okay, even if it's something that I'm not gonna use a lot, I'm not gonna go play basketball until I'll be 4 years old. I look at it as something that's good for my community. So I would pay for it because it's good for my community." And the guy kind of stepped back and you could see him kind of running that through his head. Sort of like, you know, because he could pay for, like a lot of people in Westland, he could pay for all his kids and his grandkids to have these expensive, sometimes very expensive side programs, okay? But I said, you know, one of the things you have to look at it for is you might be willing to pay that extra amount in your property tax so that your community that you live in has this facility. And I hope that he kind of stepped back from that.
Yeah, it's a powerful
And it
statement. You know, I just want to share a thought that we just did a study for Kirkland, Washington, and they put together this amazing video. And it was all about testimonials like that. And it's powerful, you know, and then that's out there and anyone can watch it, but you're actually hearing not from, you know, architects and all that, you're hearing from people like you and others in the community or youth and a variety of people. Anyway, just jumping ahead.
Chris, did you have something you wanted to throw in there? Oh, I thought I heard somebody come on.
Unmuted, so I don't know.
Oh, Diana?
Are you there?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I've heard most of it. It all sounds great. I'm super excited. I just feel bad because I kept getting cut out on part of it and couldn't log back on. But no, it sounds good. I zoomed in actually, and I was able to read a lot of the Post-it notes. And I think you guys covered most of it. Obviously, pickleball did come up a lot. Parking, lighting. Somebody had a notation there for doing a sound study and a light study in terms of how it would affect the neighborhood. So I don't know what has been discussed on those two issues. But I'm assuming it's not lit up all night. And I don't want you to have to rehash everything you've already discussed, but I just was thinking about those and in terms of the impact on the neighbors.
You know,
and
the
then
sound and light thing did come up. If I could, sorry to interrupt you there, but I just wanted to touch on that really quick. A couple of neighbors came up and talked to me at the site, and they were saying that the Safeway lights are actually a real problem for them, and that they're hoping that this would improve things. They were wanting to understand, like, what's the lighting like gonna be, because they have already got some light pollution issues, as they described it, with the Safeway parking lot. And then the other thing that I heard was, that there was a real interest in the acoustics of the inside of the building, both to make sure that it wasn't like loud outside the building, but also so that it was usable for performances in the community room and things like that. So there were a variety of kind of sound interests there, and I think that, you know, we've got the team to kind of think through that, and it's one of those more final design things, but it's something that we have been thinking and talking about too. I think the external noise is probably not as big of an issue for the neighbors, just because of where the building will be. But I do think that, you know, lighting is a real, I mean, I think that's a real thing. It does sit up on a hill, you know, it's gonna be a prominent building. And
Yeah, well, you know, we tend to, lighting's handled a little differently now, you know, in terms of focusing the light down to reduce light pollution, but yeah, that'll be some, and frankly, having a larger landscape island, breaking up the parking lot, will have a whole different effect as well. So I think we'll be able to handle that. It's more of a design issue, but it's good to be aware of.
yeah,
We aren't there yet.
so thanks. I'm sorry if there was more that you wanted to throw in there, Diana, please.
No, I'm sure you guys covered a lot of it. Overall, I think it's come along really well. It looks great. And I agree with, it sounds like there's been some really good discussions. Somebody else brought up parking and then access to Tanner Creek, like in the summer for the, music in the park and things like that. But I'm sure that's also being addressed.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Just next steps, really. Thinking about the next pieces of the process here, we've got technical work continuing as we speak. Well, maybe not tonight, but we're working towards a 3D model of the site and the building to be able to give you some of those renderings that we know will be powerful in understanding what this is going to actually look like. Building up that model also gives us the right square footages and materials and things like that to get to the most accurate so far cost estimating work that we're going to send to a professional cost estimator, that's their focus, because everybody is concerned that costs have gone up and been so fluctuating that we want to get as accurate a cost as we can and plug that into the polling and the community survey so that we can ask the community that question. Now, one of the things that has emerged that I want to just clarify for this group, because this conversation will continue to come up, is that we probably won't have final survey results at the next open house. We will have costing information, but we won't have what did the community say about that. What we'll probably be doing at that open house is announcing we're going to be launching the community version of that poll very shortly. And so we're gonna have some pieces around that. That open house, though, on May 23rd is really the thing that you all should be focused on in terms of the talking out in the community. The website's been updated. The frequently asked questions is updated. We're going to have a summary of this open house up on the website shortly. What we want to make sure of is that people can see that we're having this conversation, that we're not just throwing a design out there, seeing if it sticks. And so I think the conversation points for you all, this is one of the things the steering committee's been asking us to reinforce, is that this is an ongoing community conversation, that we're not just working in the back of a building, you know, figuring this all out and then throwing it at you, that it has opportunities for you to provide feedback, and that it's not done even when we get to the place of potentially voting on the funding. It's not done. It's not set in stone. We have not designed the final building. And so there's still flexibility in how this actually plays out, but we're trying to build the support right now to get it onto the ballot and then to get the ballot measure passed. And the ballot measure will be both capital and operating. Will probably be 2 votes. That's a tricky one. We're going to have to message that right too. But the intention is that there's no way that it makes sense for this community to go forward with the building unless they have enough money to operate it without having to make cuts elsewhere. So the intention here is that we would float probably a 5-year operating levy. That's kind of the method of choice, you know, the method available to us that goes alongside the capital bond, and we'll be talking about the costs kind of in combination. So then we'll be coming back to you all. Again, we're gonna make sure that we invite you all to all those other public pieces that come up. But we're gonna come back to give you a formal update about that second open house, kind of like we're doing right now, where, you know, okay, we've gotten through to that stage, and now we need to tell you what's going on, and we're gonna come back to the city council. When we come to you, we're still gonna be waiting. We might be just rolling in those survey results. I'm not gonna promise them, because we're like, they may be rolling in between the time that we come to talk to you and when we bring that to the council. So, I just want to set expectations reasonably here. We're working as fast as we can to get everything the best we can before we go out to that survey, before we go to council. So that's the kind of key timeline pieces right now. We'll be doing some reporting following up on that. That may stretch into the end of June, but like I said, the final decision on ballot measure will be by or before July 10th. And so, this is where it all comes to crunch, and we want to make sure that you all have the information that you need to feel comfortable saying, you know, if the community's ready to support it, we're ready to support it. And it sounds like, I just want to take the pulse of the room right now. Like, there isn't anything that you're seeing or hearing right now that feels problematic to you in terms of the kind of the way or the outcomes that we're seeing so far. Because I want to hear about them if there are, because this is the time that we can, this is the time that we can do something about it. So, is that all? I mean, it seems like people have been pretty on board. I know, Diana, you said quite a bit of support there, Chris. I don't think I heard any particular negatives from you either. So I'm gonna kind of take that as a head nodding yes. And yeah, I mean, I think that we're here, we're part of your team. You know, reaching out through Megan, through Tara, through me. We're happy to answer questions. If you have something that comes up, going to meetings, you'd like to have copies of the frequently asked questions or whatever the latest material is, ask. We're here to support that kind of conversation too. So.
Okay, so along those lines,
Yep.
I just want to do a quick summary action plan. You're going to send the invites to the meetings to the Parks and Rec Board. Tara, cut and paste the timeline slide.
You already sent it to
I already sent it.
Okay, well,
Yep.
And Ryan, you mentioned that you will be providing a report that has all of the post-its from the community.
Yep.
That's awesome. Megan's not here, but she's looking into if there's any conflicts with us doing, like a booth at the Willamette Wednesdays. You know, I'd be happy to sit at that. I have no problem with it. Yeah. So she's checking on that. And then, Ryan, could you PowerPoint to us? There's a couple that I'd like to use with a couple different groups.
Sure.
I think we're at the point, you know.
There's nothing in this that is, I mean, obviously, we're presenting this to you. This is a public meeting. There's no reason that, none of this information is meant to be private. It's all about, you know, we're just trying to refine and refine and refine.
Right.
And the only thing that we would ask is that if you are, you know, if we're a couple weeks down the road, if you want to go to a meeting or something like that, ask us if there's anything more current or whatever. Feel free to reach out and ask. But right now, things are starting to lock into place for this round because we need to get that cost estimation done. And so we're not going to be changing things too dramatically from here.
Where do the posters live?
These are living right now in the office here.
Okay, good.
So they can be picked up if you need to borrow some of those materials. I will say the site plan, the site concept on that is not going to be the most current because we're continuing to.
It's close
tweak.
enough.
It's close though, yeah. It's got the right spaces.
I think the messaging that you've been really good with is, this is a concept, work in progress.
Right.
It's here to stimulate a conversation as opposed to, here it is,
Right.
yes or no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the
As
questions
long
that
as
this
we
brings up for you? Yeah.
Your model with that.
Yeah,
we're
that's
fine.
really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, comments, or feedback on our community news center? What do you think, Alyssa?
I was going to say, Alyssa, what's your, yeah. I thought you smiling a lot.
I have programs ready for every room. I'm ready.
I think that both Megan and Tara have been that way too in all these conversations. It's been like, my mind is spinning on what we could do with this kind of space.
My my mind was spinning, so I was like, wow, does Tara have to be in charge of that too?
Not by myself. That's that operating levy.
That's the importance of an operating levy, is we can look at it and say,
Yeah.
what's it gonna take? How many people is it gonna take? What kind of staff do we need to run this and run it appropriately?
I think that's just an echo.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's part of our operational study as well. The operating levy, just to clarify, is not going to be for the full operating cost. It's going to be for the difference between what the full operating cost is and what the building is expected to support for itself. I personally don't like talking about that as an operating subsidy, but that's functionally what it is. I think of it, the way I think of it and the way that I try to message it, that's the investment that we're making in making these programs happen. We get to pay, 40 to 50% of the total cost that it takes to run this, and we get all of it. It's like we pay in taxes that much and we get twice as much back out. And the more of this kind of facility that you do, the more you get back, like the more that multiplies, it multiplies that investment. So it's, this is going to give you a real leap in your potential for programming and for that kind of magnification of effort across the community. So I'm really excited for all of you on that one. I also am really excited that I started out this project really excited that your city council was so excited about this project and your staff were so excited about this project. I'm now very excited because your community is coming out and saying, yes, we are also very excited about this project. Sure, we have our reservations or ideas, but we're ready to go forward.
Vicki, you have some other comments?
Mm-mm.
I had one that came to mind for me is like, so it feels like there's a lot of momentum moving forward, a lot of support. Hopefully it just keeps building. So, when this wraps up, it really doesn't wrap up. That the council will hopefully endorse it moving forward. So it's not too early. I'm not sure why. It's not too early to start thinking about what is the informational campaign, or how are you going to approach that? And it just, because I think that's sometimes where these projects fall short a little bit is, you do this study, council supports it, limited people know about it, and then it goes out for a bond. And I think there's an opportunity to really build on it. Even, newspaper involvement, articles, if you got the right reporter who actually reports it accurately, there's, anyway, those are all strategies. It's like, for you all. In fact, I remember the steering committee in Vancouver for the First Suburb Community Center. I mean, they just took it. They were the cheerleaders and just, they were obviously their arms spread out to involve others, but that's one of the big reasons why it happened. So anyway.
Well, Megan's checking on what we, a group,
Right.
can do, and
Yeah,
what
great.
other groups might
Yeah.
be needed.
Exactly. So you're already on it, but made me think it doesn't stop with the council approval. I know you know that. You all know it. So.
Kind of along those lines, though, before the July council meeting, I would think at some point we would put something together that would be given to the council to say,
Yeah.
and so just some agenda time in June or whenever it is. I don't see this,
Yeah.
I can't remember if that would be the June or the July meeting or how we would do that. But
We have rec center on our agenda for both May and June.
Okay.
And I'll just finish, also in May, we're just gonna circle back on Tree City, East City.
Okay.
And, so the next 2 months, it's really
Yeah.
focused on the rec center and that forward planning.
Yeah, and I mean,
Community.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Community center, gosh.
I think that could be, you're probably not going to lose the recreation votes, but you want to get the community votes. So
Community and
I
rec.
think
yeah,
that,
I
Yeah.
think that's
Okay.
true.
or whatever.
Community and
Rec
recreation.
Recreation.
All right.
All you gotta do is put an and in there.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I was,
And you don't wanna dismiss the recreation part,
That's
but
important.
community and
That's a-
recreation center, instead of saying community recreation.
Yeah,
I like that too.
okay, nice.
Also, at our next
Right.
meeting, Megan plans to do a pretty robust, project overview. She wasn't here this week and, obviously tonight was dedicated to the rec center. So, we'll have a little bit more time on one of our regular agenda items. And I think that, I just want to ask, are there any points from the board member or from city council that are important that we discuss tonight before we go into our closing?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, I noticed on city council that the Lady B, floated into the agenda again. And I just wanted to remind city council that,
Addressed it.
Parks and Rec Board had a very robust presentation, on December 8th, 22. And, we identified several concerns at that time. We made a formal vote with another presentation, June 9th of 2023, that was unanimous not to, go with the Lady B. And, I saw that it had circled back to the city council, and I just wanted to remind you that this advisory group has done a lot of due diligence looking at this and looking at options, and that it had twice now voted unanimously not to support that. So I didn't know, you know, people come and go and change.
The consideration was, were we gonna store it someplace in one of our parks? And we didn't want to do that.
So,
Well,
yeah.
actually, there's, just to address that, there's been an issue raised about the charter with respect to putting things in parks that don't directly, relate to recreation and use
Mhm.
in the park. So that's been called into question. Also, someone pointed out that there's that grinding stone display in Willamette Park that isn't necessarily about recreation. So, anyway, the conversation went kind of like this during the meeting, and you can watch the video if you want. But, we definitely are listening to the Parks Board.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And thank you for reminding,
I just,
restating.
you know, I wanted to, as chair,
Yeah.
make sure that you knew there were two meetings
Yeah.
really dedicated to
Yeah.
it, so.
Thank you. Thank you for.
All right.
Well, we're
Yeah,
here. Fabulous event coordinator, rec coordinator. So
That's right.
she's here. We should just share her.
Absolutely.
With that, I am a rec coordinator. I have been for about 4 years. I just transitioned into doing events. I previously did all youth programming, youth sports, and summer camp. And we did a whole shuffle of all of our jobs in January. And I will now be doing events. So up next, we have Pollinator Week, we have the fair, which I am very busy working on, and then, of course, music and movies in the park. Our actual next event is Earth Day Work Day. Very excited about that one. Our catalog just came out 2 weeks ago. Our summer camps are filling very, very, very well. We have a huge demand in this community for youth summer camps. A lot of them are full already, which is fantastic on one hand and challenging on the other. So there definitely is a really great demand for what we do, which is really, really fun to see happening. And I think that's about all that I have to report.
Well, Alyssa, I hope you know that the Parks and Rec Advisory Board is always so proud of all of the activities, events, recreation programs that you guys do. It is absolutely amazing. The quality that we get with the size of staff that we have blows my mind every single year. And, it makes.
Oh, yeah. I do all the social media and all the stuff here, so
During the summer, I swear, all of the park, activities are what make this city just sparkle and so special. So thank you so much.
And I think when it comes to our new community center, all of these things that we have need to kind of be, we need to remind everybody, like, we got all this great stuff. Imagine if we had this community center.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like
What we could have.
April, and it's already closing because demand is so high.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been really trying to, with all the groups that I work with, get them involved, because I did basketball, or I was in charge of basketball prior to January, and would really rally those guys, like, you want better practice time? Come on, let's get a rec center.
Yeah,
Hmm.
good for
Same thing
you.
with football.
I feel like if we attach the pickleball to,
Same with pickleball. I mean, they're a community that really wants space too, and we need to provide that space. There's so many things.
I do have one
Yeah, indoor
question
pickleball.
on our
Just
major
need
event
headphones.
schedule.
Yeah.
There was some question about Juneteenth celebration. Is that going to happen this year?
It's still being worked on,
Okay.
so hopefully we can get something by the next, or before that, I'll send it out to you, but Doug at the library, they're working on it.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
good.
the 21st. And then
Awesome.
one more thing, update for Chris on your bridge. So okay, good, yeah. So staff just went out yesterday to check the water levels. It's too low right now to turn it. So he's out there one or two times a week to check the water levels currently now. So as soon as it's ready to go, they'll try and turn it. If staff can't get to it, then we will hire our barge company that we work with to turn it.
Okay, thanks. I went back and forth with Megan on that a little bit, and that was what you just described was the process that I understood from, and, unfortunately, the water level's not projected to come up high enough anytime soon. We'll see. There's still a lot of snowpack up there that melts and so forth, but I do appreciate the department staying on this, because as the weather warms up, Cedar Island gets real popular for a very good reason. And if the bridge isn't there, they go through my neighbors' yards. And it isn't so much that, it's what they leave behind when they go through it with their dogs and so forth. So at any rate, I appreciate it.
Keep you posted. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize Mary Baumgartner, our new liaison from City Council. Welcome. And do you have any feedback or things for us?
I just have to say that I heard some sadness this morning, and it made me all the more grateful for Westland's support, is that Salem just today announced they don't have enough money and canceled all of their summer music in the park and movies in the park program. So I was just sad for them and grateful for us. So thank you all. Thank everyone. Thank the community.
It's so important here. We've never cut.
And thank you for all of your volunteer hours and the paid hours as well.
Great work, guys.
thank you all for your time tonight too, to get you up to speed and make sure, and again, I know I said it earlier on too, but all of you who have been able to make it to other events or participating in the steering committee or whatever, it's like all of that time is going to be really well spent by the time we get through this piece. I mean, it's not going to be done, but it's going to keep you up to speed in a way that'll really make this summer valuable in terms of getting the word out about this project. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Our next meeting is May 9th. Okay.